7 Things WWE Subtly Told Us at Crown Jewel 2021. WWE Crown Jewel 2021 is officially in the history books, and the company's return to Saudi Arabia delivered a solid pay-per-view. There were a few drawbacks, to be sure, but the rest of the show was nothing short of fantastic and included a Match of the Year candidate and a controversial finish. Although none of the titles changed hands, that was expected going into Crown Jewel, and instead, we got a handful of jaw-dropping moments that were witnessed live from a loud, passionate crowd in Riyadh. In the past, Crown Jewel events, like all Saudi shows, have been criticized for various reasons, but last night's pay-per-view was undoubtedly WWE's best show in the Middle East since the Saudi deal began in 2018. Number 7. Edge and Rollins delivered WWE's best Saudi Arabia match. Meeting in the opener for Crown Jewel, Edge and Seth Rollins settled the score in the third match in their trilogy. After 2 incredible bouts, the first at SummerSlam and the second at the September 10th Super SmackDown inside Madison Square Garden, their third encounter erupted inside Hell in a Cell. It's always more interesting to see the cell used outside its titular pay-per-view, and this match fit the mold of modern-day cell matches, with weapons being used aplenty, from steel chairs to tables and ladders. Both men were covered in scars at the end of the match, and there were fun allusions to the pair's past matches inside Hell in a Cell. Putting the match on first guaranteed a hot crowd, as the arena erupted with "This is awesome" chants 30 seconds into the match, and fans kept that going for as long as Edge and Seth were in the ring. In all fairness, both men earned that reception for their performances at Crown Jewel, and it was a fitting end to one of 2021's best rivalries. The match was filled with subtle moments fans may have missed, including Edge diving with a chair, a nod to his first Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker at SummerSlam 2008. When you factor in the small tribute to AEW's Christian Cage and the match's excellent storytelling, it's hard to come up with any negatives to the show's opener. The Rated R superstar used a chain and wrench in the crossface before finally delivering a curb stomp on a steel chair to defeat Rollins in what felt like a proper send-off to a bitter rivalry between two very similar competitors. Both men gave it all in one of WWE's most physical and best matches of the year, easily earning this match the title as the best WWE match in Saudi Arabia. Number 6. Goldberg Amazes at Crown Jewel. Typically, the idea of Goldberg competing is enough to send a shiver down the spine of any WWE fan, and the idea of him wrestling at a Saudi Arabia event only makes things worse. Fans haven't forgotten the dangerous botch fest that was his 2019 match with The Undertaker, and when you remember that the Hall of Famer had lost his last 3 matches against Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, and Braun Strowman, Goldberg had a lot at stake going into Crown Jewel. Instead of a repeat of The Undertaker fiasco, Goldberg had arguably his best match since returning to WWE, despite appearing to be limping to the ring before the match had even started. Things weren't helped by the fact that he was busted open with a chain right off the bat, but despite the fact that Goldberg matches usually go downhill from there, that wasn't the case last night. Sure, the match wasn't a 50 stars out of 5 classic by Dave Meltzer's standards, but it didn't need to be, as Goldberg was booked to his strengths, and to his credit, didn't make too many mistakes. Lashley, who did carry Goldberg to a few spots during the match, played his part to perfection, as did the Hurt Business in making a memorable match. Even Braun Strowman was impressed, as on Twitter, he praised the man who he dethroned as Universal Champion and the man who beat him in his last WWE match, calling the bout inspirational and saying it proves you're only as old as you want to be. With this much-needed win at Crown Jewel, Goldberg is back to being a precious commodity for WWE, and we'll have to see who's next for the former Universal Champion. Number 5. The SmackDown Women's Title flops. The second women's match at Crown Jewel 2021, Becky Lynch retained her SmackDown Women's title in a huge triple threat, defeating both Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. Facing the 2 women who held her title before her, the man was at the traditional disadvantage going into the match, which made for a very interesting bout on paper, but the match lacked a certain flow. All 3 women, especially Belair, are great in the ring, but they were quite clumsy when they came together at Crown Jewel. From the attacks, the reversals, and some spots, the uncertainty between the 3 were evident, and it's not too far-fetched to believe that the chaos of the match got the better of everyone involved. It's surprising to see Lynch retain the title as she's heading to Raw now that the draft results have come into effect, but it may not be the wrong decision. It's expected that Lynch and Raw Women's Champion Charlotte Flair will swap titles, but WWE could surprise everyone by having some kind of angle play out instead. Perhaps a winner-takes-all match at Survivor Series could be in store, or allowing the champs to keep making appearances on both shows, as long as they hold the titles associated with the other brand. For the first time in a very long while, the direction for the two big titles is full of suspense after a big pay-per-view, and we hope WWE will have some exciting twists involving both the champions after last night's show. Number 4. Paul Heyman remains on the fence. When the dust was settled after the main event, Roman Reigns stood tall as Universal Champion, but it's hard to say if he defeated Brock Lesnar or just survived the beast. The build to Crown Jewel's Universal title match was centered on whose side Paul Heyman was truly on, and his loyalty to the Tribal Chief has been in question ever since Lesnar returned. Heyman was especially cryptic heading into Crown Jewel, as in a backstage interview, he vowed to walk into Crown Jewel with the reigning, defending Universal Champion Roman Reigns, and walk out with the reigning, defending Universal Champion, not specifying who that'd be the second time around. This was of course done on purpose, and the confusing ending to the match only added more fuel to the fire. Lesnar looked on the verge of victory after an F5, but the referee was down, and after a spear from Reigns, one of many huge moves of the match, both men were down as well. It was in this moment that Heyman threw the Universal title in between the two, saying, "You know what to do with it," again making it vague who he was addressing. Brock won a tug-of-war over the title, but a double superkick by the Usos rocked the beast, and after a title shot to the head by Reigns, it was the head of the table who won the match. A post-match celebration started with the Usos and Reigns, with a very clearly conflicted Paul Heyman by their side. There was a major problem with this finish, as though no one expected the Beast to dethrone Reigns last night, the finish was a little too predictable. We've seen outside interference save the Tribal Chief multiple times, and while it can be argued that the booking stayed true to Reigns' work as a heel, it can also be debated that these finishes will slowly start to make his character look stagnant. The silver lining is that we know this saga won't end at WWE Crown Jewel, which will allow writers to add more creativity to their overall booking if they insist on Reigns using illegal methods to win. Reigns may have won, but it doesn't seem like Heyman chose which side he's on, and this controversial finish practically guaranteed a rematch with the Beast, either at the 2022 Royal Rumble or WrestleMania 38, where Heyman will have to choose. The biggest takeaway from Crown Jewel is that Paul Heyman is still on the fence, but there's only so much longer that the special counsel/advocate can stay there. Heyman hasn't exactly done himself any favors, as on Twitter, he shared a meme of him trying to decide between Reigns or Lesnar and declared himself WWE's true Crown Jewel. WWE Chairman Vince McMahon reportedly has huge plans for the Tribal Chief following this title defense, as sources reveal that there's no plans for Reigns to drop the Universal title this year. Those same sources add that WWE's plan is to build Reigns as the greatest champion of all time, meaning he'll have to beat Lesnar's record-long 504-day reign as Universal Champion that went from WrestleMania 33 to SummerSlam 2018. Following his victory over Brock, Reigns has held the title for 415 days, after winning the title at Payback 2020, and has beaten the likes of Daniel Bryan, Edge, John Cena, and now Brock Lesnar to keep the title. For Reigns to hit the crucial 504, he needs to hold the title until January 16th, and with no plans for him to lose the title this year, that seems very likely. The Tribal Chief stood tall in Riyadh, but that may not be the case tonight, as upon leaving Saudi Arabia, Brock made the threat that the moment he arrives at SmackDown tonight, he'll beat Roman Reigns senseless. We'll have to see if this comes to pass tonight, but one thing we do know is that this feud, which saw Reigns and Lesnar have arguably their best match against each other this week, is far from over. Number 3. All hail King Woods. For many fans, the selling point of Crown Jewel 2021 wasn't from seeing Brock Lesnar in action or Goldberg face Bobby Lashley, but was the hype of seeing Xavier Woods realize a boyhood dream. For many superstars, they talk about one day becoming WWE Champion, and though that still could be a dream for Woods, he always wanted to become King of the Ring. His online campaign is considered one of the key reasons why the tournament returned this year, so it was fitting that Woods was in the finals, facing Finn Balor. A former Universal Champion coming off a dominant return to NXT, Balor was the favorite to win, especially when you consider that Woods is a tag team specialist with very little singles success to speak of during his 7-year main roster tenure. Despite the odds being against him, it was Woods who got the win and the crown after defeating Balor with the Limit Breaker in a wonderful babyface moment. Not only did Woods achieve his childhood dream, but he defeated a very game Finn Balor to do so, elevating him in the eyes of the WWE Universe. On Twitter, Kofi Kingston shared his excited reaction to Woods' victory, and in an emotional backstage interview, the 22nd King said that he's amazed at 17 years into his wrestling career that he's finally achieved the only singles accolade he's ever truly cared about. Balor didn't lose much, but Woods gained plenty of credibility here, and we're hoping that the reign of King Xavier leads to more opportunities for the talented new monarch. Number 2. Vega's push has only just started. Ahead of Crown Jewel, Zelina Vega's surprising return to WWE had been a difficult one, as she'd often been on the losing end of matches on SmackDown. At Crown Jewel, Vega didn't just turn things around by becoming queen, but she became the first Queen's Crown tournament winner, and there can only be one first. In recent years, we've seen the likes of Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Carmella, Asuka, and others be crowned the firsts, whether it's starting a title lineage, main eventing pay-per-views, or another impressive accolade. Now Vega joins that esteemed list as WWE's first queen, and although Charlotte Flair uses that as a nickname, it now officially belongs to Zelina Vega. At 5 minutes 50, the finals against Doudrop was the longest match in the tournament, which has been criticized for the lack of focus it's had on TV. Vega's win doesn't necessarily guarantee that she'll be treated like Flair, Lynch, and other trailblazers before her, but it's likely she'll at least have a short-term push upon her arrival on Raw, something that she's been needing ever since her return to WWE. Number 1. Big E wins big in Riyadh, ending McIntyre's epic Raw tenure. With a slap-together storyline that felt rushed even by WWE standards, the odds were always stacked against Big E and Drew McIntyre heading into their Universal title match, but the pair managed a solid match last night. Concluding McIntyre's 3.5-year run on Raw, both men exceeded expectations, but it's arguable that expectations were low as the match was overlooked by fans against Crown Jewel's bigger bouts. Despite this, Big E and McIntyre had a memorable match with a moment of respect between the two that made the match even sweeter, as it was only fitting that the WWE Champion gave McIntyre his farewell from Raw. Big E retaining the title was always going to happen, especially since McIntyre is moving to SmackDown tonight when the draft results take effect and is expected to enter a feud with Roman Reigns. The Crown Jewel match was great, but it'll no doubt raise doubts over whether McIntyre is the right guy to challenge the Tribal Chief. McIntyre has already declared his intention to challenge for the Universal title, but if Drew can't beat Big E, what hope does he have against Roman Reigns, who is at his very best and who is bound to use illegal methods to secure the win? It's essential that WWE's creative team allows McIntyre to gain momentum on SmackDown by booking him in big matches before he goes after the Tribal Chief. McIntyre is one of the few superstars, and arguably the only full-time superstar, who appears to be a legitimate threat to Reigns, and we're counting on his loss at Crown Jewel to help motivate the Scotsman to unleash a more brutal side of his on-screen persona. As for Big E, he'll continue to be the face of Raw and is showing no sign of slowing down what has been an incredible 2021 for the New Day member. Well guys, that's our news for today. Please share your comments below. Also hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to receive all notifications. And as always, thanks for watching.